Members, at this time we will recess the regular session and welcome our guest, who I will introduce in more detail in a moment, the Premier of British Columbia, the Honourable Christy Clark. I would like to assign Senators Jackson and Gaines to escort Premier Clark to the dais. Please welcome Premier Clark. Please take a seat for just a moment. This is a special occasion, and of course, we don't usually offer the dais to our guests, but in this case, we have the privilege of welcoming who is what is essentially the governor of the province of British Columbia, known as the Premier. I had the pleasure, along with Senator Gaines and Assemblymember Ken Cooley, in September to travel to British Columbia and to meet Premier Clark, and I must say that I was most impressed. She is in her second term as British Columbia's 35th Premier. She is the second and longest-serving woman to serve as Premier and the first to lead her party to victory in general election. This was just 9 months ago, where she was behind, and her party was behind in all the public opinion polls by 25 points weeks before the election, and came back to win a resounding victory. She served prior to becoming Premier in the legislature for over 12 years and held key posts as Deputy Premier, Minister of Education, Minister of Children and Family Development, and Vice Chair of the Treasury Board. She is committed, as is California, to combating climate change. And we were most impressed by the innovation, the energy, and the forward thinking in British Columbia. And Premier Clark is here to visit with a number of industry leaders in California, with environmental leaders. She'll meet with Governor Brown later, but I'm glad that the first stop of her the Sacramento portion of her California visit is to come to our Senate chambers. Please give a warm welcome to Premier Christy Clark.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It is such a privilege to be able to address you from the dais today in the California State Senate. Mr. President, thank you very much for inviting me to take this great honor today in what I know are very challenging times here in California. And Senators, I am here as your friend, as a representative of a province that has long been a friend of the great state of California. And I have to say that through this drought that you've been experiencing, what comes through loud and clear for all of us is the resilience and the incredible resolve of Californians and of the people in this chamber. Let me allow, on behalf of British Columbians, to take a moment to salute you for your leadership in these very difficult times. And I come from one of the rainiest places in North America, and I understand that today you're predicting 3 or 4 inches of rain. And I know that some of you have been kind enough to thank me for bringing the rain. But I want you to know it isn't my leadership that's getting you through this. Obviously, it's yours. And I know it's been an incredibly difficult time. And I'm told, Mr. President, that I am the first Canadian Premier to address the Senate from the dais. And that tells me 2 things. One, that I'm sure there'll be many other premiers who are knocking down your door for the chance to have the same honor, so I better not wreck it for any of them who want to come after me. And second, that your invitation speaks volumes about our longstanding friendship between our 2 jurisdictions, because we do share so very many things in common. First and foremost, and most obviously, our magnificent geography. We share the tremendous the Pacific coastline that runs up and down North America, of which we're all so proud. And there's a history, too. Of course, in the 1950s, Californians came north for gold. in huge numbers. Tens of thousands of Californians came north, and what might have looked like scruffy dreamers in search of gold and riches to you looked to the British like potential insurrectionists bent on imposing new ideas of democratic reform and a vision to make our province part of America. And so it was because of those big dreamers from California who came north that British Columbia was hurriedly ushered into Confederation and named a province so that we would forever be a part of the northern country on this continent, Canada, rather than America. And that second premier, the first elected premier of British Columbia, was also an American, and he was a Californian. And it was almost exactly 160 years ago today, it was actually February 16th, 1854, that man, the second premier of our province, stood before this state senate and asked to change his name from William Alexander Smith to Amor de Cosmos. And he went on to become our first elected premier. But our partnership is a lot more about, is not just about our past, it is very much about the future and the days that we have ahead of us. You know, as we do, that the heartbeat of the North American economy is moving from the east to the west. And Californians and British Columbians have a long history of doing so many things very well together. Life sciences, digital media, energy innovation, and those are just a few of the things, areas of the economy that we share and work together on so well. If you look at goods and not services, just goods, British Columbia exported $1.7 billion to you, and California exported $3.1 billion to us. We are also the major point of entry for almost all Californian goods coming to Canada. But I don't want to leave the things that we share without talking about the incredible efforts that you've shown and the leadership that you've shown on climate change. Because together, each in our own way, we have put a price on carbon. In British Columbia, when we introduced the carbon tax, which is now $30 a ton, the naysayers said it would wreck our economy. It didn't. A $30 a ton carbon tax, and our economy has grown faster than the national average. At the same time, because of the pure price signal we introduced, emissions went down. It is the highest carbon tax in North America and one of the higher ones you'll find anywhere in the world. And now, through the Pacific Coast Collaborative, California and British Columbia will not be alone in putting a price on carbon. Oregon, Washington State want to stand with us too. And that means that we will have, between the four jurisdictions, the clout to make a real difference in the world. And that, to me, speaks to the greatest thing that we share, and that is our values. To make sure that our kids have every opportunity to be better off than we were, and to make sure that they can do it in a land that is unspoiled, in a geography that is as beautiful and pristine and clean as we found it when we leave it to them. It is our duty to leave this earth better and cleaner than we found it. It is a gift that we intend to pass on. And we know that in order to live those values, we also have to live within our means. It isn't just right, it just isn't right for us to decide we want to pay for things today that our children will ultimately have to bear the burden of debt for tomorrow. And that is one of the reasons I admire so much the California story. You've had the courage, the incredible political courage that it takes to move from deficits to surpluses. And I wish I had a deck of cards with me here today, but I don't. I am seeing, though, Governor Brown a little bit later in the day. And when I do, I'll tell him that we admire what he has done and what you in this state Senate have done to make sure that you're controlling spending to look after any of those lean times that come ahead. We believe in exactly the same thing in British Columbia. We are one of only 2 provinces in our country that's managed to balance our budget this year. It will be our second consecutive budget. We start there. We start there with creating a climate for investment so that we can create jobs and we can grow the economy. We want to work to leverage our strengths. And at the center of our strengths is natural gas. We want to liquefy natural gas so that we can export it and move it to Asia, the cleanest fossil fuel on the planet. And when we do that, we will create jobs at home. We'll get a higher price for it, and it will mean that we can eliminate our debt. But on the world stage, what it will mean is that we will be able to take the biggest step we have ever taken in our province to reduce global greenhouse gas emissions. And you in America know how this works, because natural gas is what's helped the United States reduce coal emissions and become a global climate leader. Now, China wants to do exactly the same thing. They're serious about buying our natural gas so that they can reduce their coal-fired power generation. And what they would do is only a fraction in terms of total reduction. But their fraction of reducing coal emissions is huge for the world. China's reduction in emissions annually would be so big that it would dwarf the entire output of British Columbia over a year and a half. Just to put that in context, the amount by which China intends to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions is equivalent to pulling every single car, closing every factory, mill, house, hospital, and school in British Columbia for an entire year and a half. If we did that, we would achieve the same reduction in emissions that China intends to achieve over the next 5 years. And that impact is going to be huge for all of us here on the West Coast. The National Academy of Sciences says that pollution from China adds a full day of smog in LA. It could be responsible for 20% of all the sulfate pollution in my province. We share one planet. We breathe the same air, and we have a shared future wherever we live on the globe. We can grow our economy, and we can do it responsibly. And we could do that while we are helping other parts of the world do the same. It's very simple to say, I know, but of course, like anything in politics, it's also very hard to do. But the west coast of North America was not built by people who were unafraid to push boundaries. This country and my country were built by people who were prepared to do things that people before them believed were impossible. Built by dreamers who freed themselves from conventional thinking. Senators, I truly hope that that is the kind of work, the kind of visionary work, the boundary-pushing work that we can do together, Californians and British Columbians. A shared history, a shared future. In every field, we can chart a new path together, and we can do it, as we always have, as the closest of friends. Thank you very much for the privilege of being able to address you today. Thank you, Mr. President. Well, just for you.
Well, in terms of a future Premier of British Columbia coming to address the Senate, I think he or she will have a very hard act to follow. So thank you so much. Really, that was a great message, and we welcome you again to California in the Senate chambers.